In this chapter, I'll show you how to create the effect known as bullet time, when everything goes into slow motion. You'll see that I've already prepared a very simple model of a car, and I've loaded the Neo model up in the air. He will be jumping on the car's hood and crushing it like you saw an agent do in the movie. Changing to frame 20, we move the Neo model to the hood of the car. We switch to the top view, and we make sure that he's centered on the hood. Now the scene is supposed to slow down at this point as he crushes the car's hood, so we move many frames ahead to frame 80. Here we will position him slightly lower than his current position. Then at frame 100, we position him back in the air, but on the right-hand side of the car. Here he's completed his jump, and he's flying off to the right. Now, we need to change his hands, because he brings them down as he lands on the hood. For this, we switch back to keyframe 20, and we select each hand, rotating it downwards. In addition to the hands moving, the head will also be animated. We will slightly rotate the head down, for a nice effect. You wouldn't want his entire body to be rigid, that just makes the animation look very awkward. We move forward to frame 80 and do a similar thing. We slightly move his arms and his head, but remember, only slightly. This part of the animation will be in slow motion, so not much movement will occur. We now switch to the final frame, and we raise his hands once again, because he lifts them as he takes off from the car. Also remember to give his head a little movement. He will be looking upwards as he jumps. It's always important to animate every part of your characters, even if the change is only slight between keyframes. This will give your characters a realistic look and feel that they won't have if they're rigid throughout the scene. Now it's important to note, the car isn't static through all this. We have to make sure that it moves too. We begin by quad dividing the body of the car several times in order to facilitate the deformation as Neo crushes the car. Now switching to the left view, we make sure to position the car appropriately when Neo lands on it. We click Look at Current Object, and we zoom in. Now we switch ahead to frame 20, and we move and rotate the car slightly so that its hood matches up with the bottoms of Neo's feet. We do the same at frame 80, making sure to give it a little more rotation. Now, at frame 100, Neo has already jumped off, and the force of the impact has caused the car to flip. To achieve this, we now rotate and move the car upwards like this. Adding a little horizontal rotation always adds a nice effect. Clicking play, you'll notice that there seems to be something wrong with the animation. The car isn't moving properly, and the Neo model is moving too much when he's supposed to be stationary. This is due to the fact that TrueSpace smooths out action between keyframes and sometimes overcorrects for sudden movements. We bring up the scene editor to fix this, and we set the animation view mode so we can see function curves instead of the bars. You'll notice that you can modify the handles on each keyframe. Since we want sudden, unsmooth movements to occur on both Neo and the car, we adjust the length of the control handles on the points down to a minimum. We do this for both the rotation and the movement parts of the animation, which you'll see TrueSpace separates on the left-hand pane. We also change the animation for the Neo object. We modify the handles in a similar fashion, making sure that the rubber band effect is minimized, and that there are sharp corners at each keyframe. You don't have to modify the beginning and ending keyframes, because you can tell they don't have much problems, but I'm going to change them just in case. That should have solved some of our problems. Now we need to make sure that Neo and the car are moving properly. We use the left-hand view to help us. Check the movement at each keyframe to ensure that TrueSpace hasn't done any unnecessary smoothing. You'll notice that at frame 80 the car is too far up. We bring it back down, and now the problem is corrected. Match it up with the bottom of his feet. We'll be deforming the hood shortly. Let's go back to frame 0. We select the body of the car, and we zoom in a little closer to get a better look. We bring up the deform tool and select local deformation. We select the midpoint in the front of the hood. At frame 20, this point will be moved down slightly because Neo has just landed on the hood. At frame 80, the crushing will be much more severe, so we move the point farther down accordingly. Since the hood is now slightly lower, we also notice that we have to move the Neo model down so that his feet still rest on the hood. We'll also give him a little rotation to match the angle of the hood's deformation. Playing the scene now, you'll see that the animation is much more acceptable. When I created this scene for the South Park Reloaded, it took much tweaking to get it looking just right. Be sure to use different view modes, as well as different angles, to analyze important scenes and make sure they come out nicely. You'll also notice that your scene may play out at different speeds in different view modes. If you'll notice here, the scene plays out much faster in the wireframe mode than in the semi-transparent mode we had selected previously. What you've got to remember is that 30 frames equals 1 second in the final video. Don't let preview speeds affect your final animation.